it's Miss Rachel here. I hope you guys are having an awesome afternoon. I thought it was a great time to read you a story about how chocolate chip cookies were invented and who made the very first chocolate chip cookie. But it's your choice on what story you believe. So let's go through all the different stories on how everyone thinks the chocolate chip cookie was invented. Let's get started. How the cookie crumbled. Do these look familiar? What are those? Chocolate chip cookies. Ever wonder where these round, crispy, chocolatey pieces of perfection came from? Everyone agrees that the chocolate chip cookie was invented by Ruth Wakefield. But how did she do it? That's where the story gets messy. I'm here to show you some ways it could have happened. So sit back, relax, grab a cookie, and I'll sweep up the crumbs. Ever since Ruth was old enough to hold a spoon, she was helping out her grandma in the kitchen. She'd carefully pour the scalding cheese into a rum-tum ditty and measure with precision the flour in her applesauce cakes. You see, to Ruth, cooking was a science, and the kitchen was her lab. So no one was surprised when Ruth went off to college to study nutrition. After she finished school, Ruth went out and on to teaching cooking in high school. Although she enjoyed leading her classes, she hungered for something more. Then Ruth met Kenneth Wakefield, who shared her passion for cooking. He quickly became the apple of her eye, and it wasn't long before they married and started cooking up a plan to run their own restaurant. But their plan didn't fall into place until 4 years later. And with a young son in tow, the two lovebirds found an old tool house in Whitman, Massachusetts. They knew it was now or never. Ruth and Kenneth scraped up their savings, signed on the dotted line, and fixed the place up, naming it the Toll House Inn. Look, it's the restaurant. Here's Ruth and Kenneth and their baby boy. Ruth didn't let hard times stop her from opening her restaurant. She ran a tight ship, planning the menu and doing most of the cooking herself, while Kenneth ordered food and helped out in the kitchen. Whoa, look at Ruth running around. Ruth's staff said she was one tough cookie to work for. She demanded that the servers set the tables flawlessly, perfectly. And she even measured the distance between the fork and the plate for accuracy, meaning that they're perfect. They have to be perfect. As diners began to trickle into the toll house, Ruth's hard work sure paid off. She sent her customers home with full stomachs and a craving to come back for more. Now, let's get started on those stories I was talking to you about on how the chocolate chip cookie was invented. The trouble is, no one can agree on how Ruth Wakefield did it. Here are the 3 ways, 1, 2, 3. The story has been told over time. Number 1, the disaster. As one tale goes, it all began when Ruth was whipping up a batch of butter drop dew cookies. Her mixer was spinning dough like a tornado, and it knocked the Nestle chocolate bar off the shelf. The chocolate fell right into the mix, and wow, what a disaster, Ruth thought. But the grill man suggested that Ruth bake the cookies anyway. Ruth gave it a try, and when she pulled out those cookies from the oven, she discovered they were delicious. Now, that was the first story. I want you guys to decide what story you think is true about how the chocolate chip cookies were invented. Let's go to story number 2. The substitutes. Ruth was in a hurry. Our talented chef had forgotten to order baking chocolate. So she improvised. She made up an idea. by taking an ice pick to a Nestle chocolate bar. She thought that by sprinkling the chunks into the dough, the chocolate would melt evenly. But when she pulled the cookies from the oven, boy was she wrong. Ruth yelled, "They're ruined!" Of course someone else in the kitchen took a bite just to see what they tasted like. Then Ruth took a bite too, and she agreed. They were delicious. Now story number 3. The Mastermind. While returning from a trip to Egypt, Ruth was pondering an old cookie recipe when inspiration struck her. Ruth got back to her kitchen and went straight to work, mixing up dough. After the timer dinged, Ruth pulled the cookies from the oven and looked at her invention. It was exactly how she imagined it. She shut her eyes, took a bite, and savored the warm, gooey chocolate chip cookie. So, which version of the story do you believe? Do you believe story 1, story 2, or story 3? Let's go over them. The disaster. Although it is possible that the candy bar fell straight into the dough, this tale seems a little half-baked. The substitute. Do you think that Ruth, who went to school and studied nutrition, didn't know how semi-sweet chocolate would melt when she cooked it? That's a little hard to believe. But here's some food for thought. The Mastermind, the third story. Isn't it possible that Ruth actually knew what she was doing? Anyone who knew Ruth would tell you she had a reputation for inventing delicious desserts at the Toll House Inn. And she traveled far and wide to find new recipes. If you ask me, Ruth deserves some credit herself. She is definitely one smart cookie. Now, let's get back to the story. Ruth placed the cookies on a platter and took a deep breath, held them high, and then she marched into the dining room and presented her dessert to the customers. The diners pushed back their plates and reached for a cookie. Crunch, crunch, crunch. These are delicious. The cookies were a hit. Everyone loved them. Word spread about Ruth's Toll House chocolate crunch cookies, and folks drove from miles around to try one. So Ruth added more tables and expanded her restaurant. People begged Ruth for her recipe, and she didn't mind sharing it one bit. She even sent it to the newspaper. Soon, everyone in Boston was baking Toll House chocolate crunch cookies. But it wasn't until Ruth was interviewed on a Betty Crocker radio show that word really spread. Now bakers all across the world were talking about Ruth's chocolate chip cookies. Meanwhile, the managers at Nestle's scratched their heads. A spike in sales in their candy bars happened. So a lot of people were buying candy bars to put in their cookie mix. When they discovered that the cause was Ruth's chocolate crunch cookies, they begged her for her recipe. Ruth gave it to them, and Nestle began to produce chocolate chip designed cookies. And Ruth? Legend has it that she was awarded a lifetime supply of Nestle chocolate. By the 1940s, every grocery store in America carried the Toll House cookie recipe on each bag of Nestle's chocolate chip cookies. From kitchen to kitchen across the world, cookies were baking. After a long day in her kitchen, Ruth was able to sit and enjoy a sweet taste of success and all of its crunchy, gooey, chocolatey perfection. And that, my friends, is how the cookie crumbled. The end. Thank you guys for listening to this awesome story. Well, 3 awesome stories about how the chocolate chip cookie was invented by Ruth Wakefield. I hope you guys had fun listening to me, and I hope you chose one of the stories that you believe. Let me know next time we talk what story you believed in. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Thanks again, guys, for listening, and I hope you guys have the good rest of your week. And yeah, have a great day. Bye.